Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The storm came to the rock before the ravens did. Rain fell hard upon the western cliffs, drumming against the red stone towers of Casterly Rock like the roll of war drums. Beneath the roaring sea and the crying wind, torches flickered along the ramparts where sentries huddled in cloaks of crimson and gold. From afar, the fortress gleamed faintly, less a castle, more a mountain carved into the likeness of power itself. But even mountains crumble from within. Ser Jaime Lannister rode through the gate at dusk, his golden hand glinting with every flash of lightning. He had ridden from King's Landing without escort, without herald, and without a word to anyone save his horse. The air smelled of salt and rain, and he could not tell if it was the sea or his own fear that turned his stomach. It had been years since he'd last seen his home, yet everything seemed smaller now. The halls narrower, the light dimmer, the voices quieter. The golden lions upon the banners were dull with damp, and the servants bowed with eyes averted. Once, this had been a place of laughter and song, of feasts and fine wine. Now, it felt like a tomb. At the base of the great hall's stair, he found Sir Davin Lannister waiting. Davin was broader than Jaime remembered, with a beard thick as a hedge and armor polished bright as a mirror. He bowed slightly, though not too low. "Cousin," Davin said, his voice low, steady. "I was told you might come. The gods are kind to grant it before the storm breaks." "Kind?" Jaime dismounted, his boots splashing through puddles. "I rode through 7 hells to reach you, and the gods send rain instead of welcome." Davin's smile was grim. "Aye. Welcome's a rare thing in these halls of late." They walked together through the great corridors, the thunder echoing behind them. The halls of Casterly Rock were carved deep into the mountain, smooth stone, gold inlay, the scent of burning oil and damp fur. But the torches burned low, and many alcoves stood unlit. "Where is everyone?" Jaime asked. "Gone," Davin said. "Or hiding. The Queen's letters stopped coming weeks ago. Word is that Daenerys Targaryen sails for the capital, and men here whisper what that means for us." Jaime's jaw tightened. "Cersei holds the Iron Throne. The West will stand with her." "Will it?" Davin's gaze slid toward him, searching. "You've not seen the ledgers, cousin. You've not seen the mines. The gold is gone. The levies are spent. Half our bannermen would rather bend the knee to a dragon than die for a queen they've never met." "Never met?" Jaime's voice sharpened. "She is their blood." Davin sighed. "And yet blood means less than survival now." They stopped before the great doors of the Hall of Lords. The lion's head carved into the oak looked worn, its golden mane dimmed by age and neglect. Davin placed a hand on the door, but didn't open it. "There's talk," he said softly. "Talk that Tyrion Lannister sends letters from Dragonstone, promises of mercy, safe passage. He names himself Hand of the Queen." Jaime stared at him. "Tyrion? You've spoken with him?" Davin hesitated. "I've heard his words. Read them, perhaps." Lightning flashed, casting Davin's face in stark white light. The thunder followed, long, rolling, distant, like the growl of some slumbering beast. "Be careful, cousin," Jaime said. "The Queen will have no mercy for traitors." Davin's expression did not change. "Then perhaps mercy lies elsewhere." The doors opened at last. Inside the hall, the great chairs stood empty save one. Upon the high seat once kept for the Lord of the Rock sat a woman in crimson silk, her hair streaked with gold and gray. She rose as Jaime entered, her eyes bright with surprise and something else, something wary. "Jaime," she whispered. "Lady Jenna," he greeted. Tywin's sister had aged since last he saw her, but her presence filled the room as surely as it had when she was young. She embraced him tightly, then stepped back to study his face. "You shouldn't have come," she said quietly. "The Rock isn't safe anymore. Not for any of us." "Safe from what?" "From ourselves," she said. A silence stretched between them as thunder rolled again outside. Jaime felt the old weight return, the same cold heaviness he'd felt the day he killed Aerys Targaryen, the same guilt that haunted every step since. He had come to save his family. He wasn't sure what was left to save. As night fell over Casterly Rock, the wind howled through the cliffs, carrying with it the distant cry of a horn, one long, mournful note that echoed through the mountain's heart. Davin turned sharply. "The harbor watch." "What is it?" Jaime asked. Davin's eyes were grim. "Ships. Whose?" He didn't answer at first. Then, as another flash of lightning lit the sea beyond the cliffs, Jaime saw them, dark silhouettes against the storm, sails torn but still proud. The lion banners were gone, replaced by black and red. "Dragons," Davin said. "The Dragon Queen has come to the west." And in that moment, Jaime understood. The storm that had come to the Rock was not made of rain or thunder. It was made of fire. The dawn after the storm was gray and cold. Mist clung to the cliffs like shrouds of silk, and the sea below beat against the rocks with steady, mournful rhythm. Casterly Rock had weathered countless tempests through the ages, yet never had it felt so fragile, so hollow within. Jaime Lannister stood upon a high balcony, his cloak drawn close, his golden hand catching pale light. Below him, men scrambled along the western harbor. Fires burned on the strand where wreckage had washed ashore. Broken planks, shattered masts, and the bodies of men who had thought to take the Rock in darkness. "They came before dawn," Sir Davin said behind him. "A small fleet. Scouts, I'd wager. Thought they might find our gates open." "Whose banners?" Jaime asked, though he already knew. "Black sails, red sigil, the Dragon's Brood." Jaime's jaw hardened. Then the storm was their herald. He turned from the sea. Davin followed, his expression wary. "We sent word to Lannisport. The garrison there holds, but they can't withstand dragons, if it comes to that." "Nor can we," Jaime said quietly. "But dragons burn as men do. They can die." Davin frowned. "You've fought none, cousin. None of us have." "Then we'll learn quickly, or not at all." They descended into the great hall once more. Lady Jenna waited beside the hearth, speaking softly with her maester. She looked up as the two men entered, her eyes dark with worry. "More dead?" she asked. "A score," Davin said. "Most drowned, some burned." The maester, gray-bearded, sharp-eyed, shifted uncomfortably. "There are rumors already spreading among the men, my lady. They say the Dragon Queen's host is near Fair Isle, that she brings Unsullied with her, and sells wards from Essos. They say even the Ironborn fight beneath her banner now." Jaime sat, the weight of the words pressing down like a mailed fist. He had known this day must come. When he rode from King's Landing, the city already trembled under the threat of fire. Cersei had promised victory, but he had seen the madness behind her eyes, the same madness that had burned Aerys to ash. And yet he loved her still, cursed though that love might be. He looked to Davin. How many men remained sworn to the Rock? Barely 4,000. Lannisport's militia could raise another 2, maybe 3 if we stripped the countryside. but without coin, we can't pay them long." Lady Jenna crossed her arms. "And Daenerys Targaryen comes with thrice that number, and dragons besides. We cannot win by arms alone." The Maester cleared his throat. "There is another matter, my lady. A raven arrived before the storm. The seal was broken when we found it, but the words—" He hesitated, glancing at Jaime. "It was signed by Tyrion Lannister." The hall fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause beyond the windows. "What did it say?" Jaime asked. The Maester unfolded the parchment with trembling hands. "He writes to you, Sir Jaime. He says that Daenerys does not wish the West destroyed, that she remembers the kindness you once showed him. He offers you mercy and safe passage if Casterly Rock bends the knee." Davin's voice was rough. "Mercy from the Kinslayer." "Don't call him that," Jaime said sharply. "He was condemned unjustly, and you know it." "Perhaps, but his words are poison now." Jaime rose, pacing before the hearth. "Tyrion's clever, too clever by half. If he speaks of mercy, it's because he knows what's coming. He knows Cersei will fall." Lady Jenna watched him quietly. "And if he's right?" Jaime turned toward her, the firelight gleaming in his golden hand. "Then she falls as a queen, not as a coward." But even as he said it, the words felt hollow. By noon, the mist had lifted from the sea, revealing sails on the horizon, scores of them, gleaming white in the winter sun. The Dragon Queen's fleet moved in a long, steady line, their banners streaming like tongues of flame, and among them, black shapes circled in the sky. Dragons. The bells of Casterly Rock began to toll. Jaime stood upon the battlements as men rushed to arms, bows strung, catapults wound tight. Below, Lannisport's harbor filled with shouts and clamor. He could see the ships drawing closer now, sleek, foreign-built, their hulls cutting through the waves with terrible grace. Then, from the largest of them, a boat lowered. A white flag fluttered at its bow. Davin swore. "A parley!" "They come under truce," Jaime said. "We'll hear them." Within the hour, the small boat reached the shore. 3 figures stepped onto the strand, unsullied soldiers flanking a woman wrapped in crimson and gold. Her hair was pale as moonlight, her face calm beneath the shadow of her hood. She bore no weapon, save the parchment she carried in her gloved hand. Jaime rode down with a company of men to meet her. The sea wind tugged at his cloak as he approached. "Sir Jaime Lannister?" she called, her voice clear. "I am he," Jaime answered. "Speak your terms." She bowed slightly. "I am Missandei of Nath, envoy of Queen Daenerys Stormborn. My queen bids me deliver this message. The West need not burn. Swear fealty, open your gates, and your lands shall be spared. Resist, and fire shall cleanse these stones." Davin snorted. "Empty threats." Missandei's gaze was steady. "You've not seen her dragons." Jaime dismounted. "Tell your queen we will give her our answer soon enough." The envoy inclined her head and returned to her boat. As the tide carried her back toward the waiting fleet, Davin turned to Jaime. "You mean to stall them?" Jaime nodded. "Aye. Every hour we buy gives us time to prepare, or to choose." "Choose what?" Jaime looked toward the sea, where dragons wheeled like living shadows against the pale sky. "Whether we fight for pride," he said softly, "or for survival." That night, the rock slept uneasy. The men muttered of fire and wings in the dark. From his chambers, Jaime could hear the distant cries of gulls and the restless murmur of the waves. He could not sleep. His thoughts turned to Cersei, alone in the Red Keep, surrounded by enemies and false friends alike. He had sworn once to protect her from all harm, yet now he feared she was beyond saving. When dawn came again, It brought smoke on the wind. Lannisport was burning. Jaime rushed to the battlements, his heart hammering. Below, the city's harbor blazed with wild fire. Ships burned like torches, their masts collapsing into flame. Above them, a shape vast and terrible moved through the sky, its wings blotting out the sun. Drogon. The dragon roared, and the sound shook the sea itself. Men fled screaming from the docks. Arrows flew, but they fell harmless against the creature's scales. The air smelled of ash and death. Beside him, Davin stared in horror. "Gods help us!" Jaime gripped the cold stone of the parapet. "The gods won't," he said. "Only lions can save lions now." And far below, amidst the smoke and ruin, the Dragon Queen's banners rose over Lannisport. The war for the West had begun. The sky above the western sea burned crimson with dawn fire. Smoke rose in black columns from Lannisport, curling toward the clouds like the fingers of some dying god. From the highest tower of Casterly Rock, Jaime Lannister watched the ruin unfold, silent as the grave. The Dragon Queen's fury had been swift. Her beasts had descended upon the harbor with screams like tearing metal, reducing ships, walls, and men alike to ash. No army marched upon the gates, no siege engines rolled across the field, only flame and wings. The greatest city of the West had fallen in a single morning. And yet, amidst the fire, Tyrion's words echoed still. The West need not burn. Jaime turned away from the window, his golden hand glinting faintly in the dim light. The council chamber smelled of smoke and sweat. Around the long table sat Lady Jenna, Sir Davin, and a score of lesser lords, the remnants of a house once proud beyond measure. "Our ships are lost," Davin said, his voice heavy. "Half our garrison fled before the dragons struck. Lannisport burns, and the rock stands alone." "Alone?" Lady Jenna repeated, her tone sharp. "The lions of the West are not broken yet." Davin's eyes darkened. "They soon will be, my lady, if we cling to pride instead of sense. We cannot fight fire with flesh." A murmur rippled through the gathered men. Fear, anger, shame. Some spoke of retreating inland to rally their banners. Others whispered of surrender, though none dared speak the word aloud while Jaime sat at the table. He silenced them with a look. "Enough. We will not scatter like frightened sheep. The rock has never fallen, and it will not fall now." But even as he said the words, doubt gnawed at him. He had once believed in such things, unbreakable walls, unyielding blood. But he had seen cities crumble, oaths rot, and kings die screaming. The Maester entered then, bowing low. "Sir Jaime, my lords, a rider has come from the harbor. He bears a flag of truce, and a letter." Davin stiffened. "Another envoy?" The Maester held out the parchment. The seal was broken, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Tyrion's, bold and elegant. Jaime took it, his heart tightening as he read. "Brother, I know what you have seen. I know the ruin that lies before you. Yet Daenerys offers you more than destruction. She remembers what you did for her father, though few others do. Bend the knee, open the gates, and the West shall be spared. The rock will remain yours. Refuse, and she will bring fire enough to turn your gold to slag. You once told me you wanted peace. This is your chance to have it." Tyrion Jaime folded the parchment slowly. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting shadows across the walls carved with golden lions. "What does he offer?" Lady Jenna asked. "Peace," Jaime said, "and mercy." "From a Targaryen?" Davin's lip curled. "There is no mercy in dragons, cousin. You know that better than any man alive." Jaime met his gaze. "I know what fire does to flesh. That's why I mean to end this before it happens again." The room went still. Lady Jenna rose, her eyes fierce. "You would surrender the rock?" "I would save it," Jaime said. "Save our people. You saw Lannisport. Would you have those flames at our gates?" "You speak of mercy as though the Queen will grant it freely," Davin said. "You forget. Tyrion serves her now. He'd see this rock buried if it meant his vengeance." Jaime's voice hardened. "Tyrion does not hate as Cersei does. He wants to build, not burn. If there's a chance to end this war without another city dying, we must take it." Davin slammed his fist upon the table. "You would shame the memory of your father. Tywin Lannister did not kneel." "No," Jaime said softly, "and his pride killed him in the end." A silence followed, thick, heavy, and final. Lady Jenna's voice broke it at last. "Do what you must, nephew. But if you open those gates, you may find no mercy waiting on the other side." By nightfall, the fires of Lannisport had dimmed to embers. The Dragon Queen's host camped along the shore, their banners black and red against the pale sand. Jaime watched from the parapets as soldiers moved among the wreckage, setting up tents and watchfires. The dragons slept somewhere beyond the cliffs, their faint roars carried on the wind. He could not sleep. He stood long by the window, staring down at the dark sea. The letter lay open on the table behind him, its words glinting in the candlelight like the edge of a blade. "Bend the knee, open the gates, and the West shall be spared." At last, he turned away and took up his cloak. He descended through the winding halls to the lower gatehouse, where the guards straightened at his approach. "Open the gate," he said. The captain hesitated. "My lord, you heard me. Open it." The iron portcullis groaned as it rose. The sea wind rushed in, cool and salt-bitten. Jaime stepped through, alone, and began the long descent down the cliffs toward the strand. The campfires of the Dragon Queen flickered ahead, bright against the dark. He walked among the ashes of Lannisport, past the burned remains of ships and men. The stench was thick and bitter, but he did not falter. When he reached the edge of the camp, the Unsullied barred his path with spears crossed. "I come to speak with your queen," Jaime said. "Tell her the rock opens its gates." They hesitated, then one turned and vanished into the shadows. Moments later, a voice came from the darkness, cool, calm, and strange. "Let him through." Daenerys Targaryen stood by the shore, her white hair gleaming like moonlight, her eyes the color of summer sky. Behind her, the dragons slept, vast shadows upon the sand. Tyrion stood beside her, cloaked in black and red. "Ser Jaime," the queen said. "So the lion comes to the dragon at last." Jaime bowed. "I come to end this war before it destroys what little remains." Tyrion's face was unreadable. "You mean to surrender?" Jaime met his brother's eyes. "I mean to save our people." Daenerys regarded him in silence for a long moment. Then she said, "And your sister?" "What of her?" "She will never yield," Jaime said quietly. "But I no longer fight for her." The queen's expression softened slightly. "You would serve me then?" "I would serve peace," he said. "If you promise mercy to those who surrender, I'll open the gates of Casterly Rock." Tyrion stepped forward, his voice low. "And what of those who won't surrender?" Jaime's gaze was steady. "Then they'll answer to the dragons." The queen considered him. The sea hissed upon the shore. Then, at last, she nodded. "So be it. At dawn, the banners of House Targaryen shall fly above Casterly Rock, and the blood of lions shall no longer stain the sand." As the waves broke at their feet, Jaime felt the weight of centuries upon his shoulders, the pride of his house, the ruin of his kin, and the faint, flickering hope that from all this fire, something better might be born. But in the darkness behind him, unseen among the cliffs, another figure watched and listened, a man cloaked in shadow, his armor red and gold. And as the Dragon Queen turned away, the spy slipped back toward the rock, bearing word that would soon turn brother against brother, and lion against lion once more. For the power of House Lannister had begun to devour its own. The dawn broke red upon the rock, painting its towers with the hue of blood. In the great hall, the banners of Lannister still hung proud, but beneath them a silence lay, heavy, uncertain, like the hush before a storm, yet greater than the one that had already come. The gates of Casterly Rock were opening. Jaime Lannister stood upon the ramparts as the iron chains groaned and the massive doors creaked wide. Below, the army of the Dragon Queen advanced in disciplined ranks, their spears glinting like a field of needles beneath the sun. Banners of black and crimson rippled in the wind, the dragon sigil coiling and unfurling as if alive. At the vanguard rode Tyrion Lannister, clad in dark armor trimmed with silver. The sight of him, a dwarf leading foreign soldiers beneath the walls of his father's keep, drove murmurs through the garrison. Some spat curses, others turned away in disbelief. Jaime said nothing. He had made his choice, and choices once made were not so easily unmade. "By the gods," Ser Davin muttered beside him. "The imp returns to the rock with dragons at his back. Tywin must be turning in his grave." Jaime's voice was flat. "Then let him turn. The world he built is ashes now." When Tyrion reached the gate, Jaime descended to meet him. The courtyard was thick with men, unsullied and Lannister alike, eyeing each other warily. No blade was drawn, though every hand rested close to steel. Tyrion dismounted and looked up at the fortress that had once been his prison. "Strange," he said quietly. "I never thought I'd see this place again, save in nightmares." "It hasn't grown kinder," Jaime replied. "No, but it may yet grow wiser." Behind Tyrion rode a small retinue of the Queen's commanders, Grey Worm, silent and stone-faced, Ser Jorah Mormont, grim beneath his worn helm, and Missandei, her gaze sharp and assessing. They bowed briefly, but their hands never left their weapons. "Where is the Queen?" Jaime asked. "She waits until the rock is secured," Tyrion said. "You know her mind, mercy tempered by caution." "I know the kind of mercy that burns cities," Davin muttered from behind. Tyrion's eyes flicked to him, cool and unimpressed. "Then be grateful she chose not to burn this one." Lady Jenna descended the steps, her crimson gown sweeping the stone. "So it is true," she said. "The lions bow to dragons." Tyrion inclined his head. "Better to bow than to burn, Aunt." Her gaze hardened. "You speak boldly for one who murdered his father." "Perhaps," Tyrion said, his tone edged with weary irony. "But I learned well from him that a lion should not die on its knees." The tension in the air thickened until it seemed the very stones might crack. Jaime stepped between them. "Enough. This day will see no bloodshed beneath our roof." He turned to the gathered men. "By order of the Warden of the West, the rock submits to Queen Daenerys Stormborn, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Any man who draws his sword against her will answer to me." The words fell like a hammer blow. Murmurs rippled through the ranks, disbelief giving way to outrage. Some soldiers shouted protests, others threw down their arms in disgust. A few knelt, hesitant, uncertain, but willing to live. Lady Jenna's voice rose above the noise. "You would betray your sister, your queen, for this foreign woman?" Jaime faced her squarely. I would not see our people turn to ash for her pride. And what will she make of us once we kneel? Jenna demanded. Pets? Prisoners? Tyrion's tone was measured. Subjects, alive ones. That night, the Dragon Queen herself came to the rock. She arrived at dusk, her dragons wheeling high above, their shadows sweeping across the battlements like dark clouds. The roar of wings sent men to their knees. The air grew hot with the scent of smoke and scales. Daenerys entered through the great gate, clad in black and silver, her pale hair flowing behind her like a banner. She walked beside Tyrion, her gaze taking in the halls of Casterly Rock, the gold-veined walls, the empty thrones, the faded glory of a house once feared across the realm. So this is the lair of the lions, she said softly, built upon gold, sustained by blood. Both long spent, Tyrion replied. Jaime knelt before her. Your Grace, he said, his voice low. Casterly Rock is yours. She studied him, her expression unreadable. You were called Kingslayer once, she said, and yet you would kneel to a queen. I've killed one mad ruler, Jaime said quietly. I'll not serve another. Her gaze lingered on him, weighing truth and deceit. Then she nodded. Rise, Ser Jaime. The war for the West is over. But wars seldom end with words alone. In the days that followed, the rock became a nest of uneasy alliance. The Unsullied patrolled its halls, their silent discipline clashing with the wary pride of the Lannister men who remained. Gold was scarce, tempers shorter still. Rumors whispered through the corridors, rumors of betrayal, of secret messengers riding east beneath moonlight, and in the deep vaults beneath the fortress, where the gold veins once gleamed like rivers of sunlight, something darker stirred. Jaime found Davin there one evening, overseeing men who moved crates by torchlight. What are you doing? Jaime asked. Davin turned, his face shadowed. Preparing for what comes next. We've already surrendered. Aye, Davin said, prying open a crate. Inside, rows of crossbow bolts gleamed. But our queen still lives, and she will come for you when she learns what you've done. Jaime stepped closer, his hand resting on his sword hilt. You would defy me? Defy the new queen? Davin's voice dropped to a growl. I would defend my blood. The torches flickered as the two men faced one another. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Jaime spoke, softly. Do you think I wanted this? I did what I must to keep us alive. Alive? Davin spat. You've traded our pride for scraps from a dragon's table. You've shamed our name. Better shame than ashes, Jaime said. Davin's eyes gleamed with fury. You're not your father. No, Jaime whispered. Thank the gods. They stood locked in silence. Then Davin turned away, his voice cold. The lions will remember, cousin, even if you've forgotten what it means to be one. When Jaime left the vaults, the torches still burned behind him, but the shadows seemed to move differently, twisting in ways that promised blood yet to come. That night, a raven flew from the highest tower of Casterly Rock, bearing a message written in a firm, secret hand. It flew eastward, through cloud and storm, toward King's Landing. And in the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister read her brother's betrayal by candlelight, her eyes gleaming like twin shards of glass. So, she whispered, her voice calm as winter, my brother opens our gates to dragons. She folded the letter carefully, then turned to Qyburn, who waited in the shadows. Send word to Euron Greyjoy, she said. Tell him it is time. Far away, upon the cliffs of the west, Jaime dreamed of fire and wings and the taste of ash on his tongue. The rock had been spared, but the true storm was yet to come. One born not of dragons, but of lions. For House Lannister had begun to eat its own, and the feast had only just begun. The raven's flight marked the turning of fate. Across the western sky it went, black wings cutting through dawn's pale light, a silent herald of vengeance. By the time its shadow vanished beyond the sea, the seed of ruin had already taken root. Jaime Lannister stood before the tombs of his kin in the cavernous depths beneath Casterly Rock. The air was cold and smelled faintly of iron and dust. Rows of stone lions lined the walls, guardians of a legacy both mighty and cursed. He gazed upon the effigy of his father, Tywin, carved in marble, sword upon his chest, a lion at his feet. The face was stern even in death, the same look that had haunted Jaime in life. "You built a house of gold," Jaime whispered, "and filled it with wolves." His words echoed softly through the vault. Behind him, the sound of boots broke the silence. Tyrion approached, torchlight glinting in his eyes. "I thought I might find you here," he said. "You always did come to Father when you didn't know what to do." Jaime didn't turn. "Do any of us ever stop?" Tyrion came closer, his expression shadowed. "You've done what few dared, brother. You spared your men, your house, perhaps even this realm. You should feel some peace." "Peace?" Jaime's voice was hollow. "Tell that to the men who whisper rebellion in their cups, or to our aunt who won't meet my eyes. They think I've betrayed our blood." "Maybe you have," Tyrion said softly, "but you did it for the right reasons." Jaime turned at last, his golden hand catching the light. "And what of you, Tyrion? Do you sleep easy, serving the queen who burned a city to prove her mercy?" Tyrion's mouth twitched in something that wasn't quite a smile. "No one sleeps easy beside dragons." A moment passed in silence. The torch crackled. Somewhere far above, the sound of distant horns carried faintly through stone. "What is it?" Jaime asked. "Scouts returning," Tyrion said. "They've sighted sails on the horizon, gray sails." Jaime's heart went still. "The Iron Fleet?" Tyrion nodded grimly. "Your sister sends her greetings." By noon, the sea beyond the cliffs churned with shadow. Ships dark as night cut through the waves. Euron Greyjoy's fleet, swift and silent, their masts bristling with black banners. They came not as raiders, but as predators, closing in for the kill. From the battlements, Jaime watched their approach. The wind tore at his cloak as horns blared through the rock, summoning men to arms. The air filled with shouts, the ring of steel, the thunder of hooves on stone. "Prepare the defenses," he ordered. "Signal the queen." Davin appeared beside him, armor gleaming, eyes hard. "So the dragons did not frighten her off after all," he said. "She's coming for me," Jaime replied. "For all of us." Below, the harbor that had once burned under dragonfire now filled again with smoke, this time from the flaming pitch hurled by the Iron Fleet's catapults. Arrows rained against the cliffs, and the crash of battle rose from the shore. Daenerys was swift to answer. From the eastern ramparts came the thunder of wings. Drogon rose into the sky with a roar that shook the sea, his black form cutting across the clouds. Fire poured from his jaws, washing over the enemy ships. Masts split, decks blazed, and men screamed as the flames consumed them. Yet the Ironborn were cunning. Great ballistae mounted upon their decks, loosed bolts tipped with chains. One struck Drogon's flank, drawing a cry of pain from the beast. Another bolt struck the cliffs, sending stone and dust cascading down. Jaime gripped the battlements. "Hold fast," he shouted. "Don't let them breach the shore." Davin gave the order, and the Lannister archers loosed volley after volley. Arrows darkened the sky, finding marks among the Ironborn ranks. But still, the ships came. Then, amidst the smoke, a massive vessel surged forward. The Silence, Euron's flagship, its hull carved with screaming faces. Upon its deck stood the Crow's Eye himself, clad in black leather, a patch of shadow where his left eye had once been. He raised his axe and laughed as fire reflected in his good eye. "Lions and dragons," he roared. "I'll have trophies from both." Before Jaime could give command, the silence rammed against the harbor wall. Grappling hooks flew. Ironborn swarmed ashore, their axes gleaming, their battle cries filling the air. The clash was brutal. Lannister steel met Ironborn iron in a storm of sparks and blood. Jaime fought among his men, sword flashing, golden hand dented and darkened with soot. He cut down one foe, then another, the old rhythm returning like a forgotten song. But for every man they slew, 2 more took his place. Amid the chaos, a horn sounded, not from the sea, but from within the rock itself. Jaime turned sharply. "What was that?" Davin's face blanched. "The lower gate." Even as he spoke, shouts rose from below. The gate to the tunnels beneath the rock had been thrown open, from the inside. Through it poured Ironborn raiders, guided by some hidden hand. "Traitors," Davin spat. "Someone's betrayed us." Jaime's mind raced. The vaults, the men Davin had gathered there. "You armed them," he realized. "You armed the traitors." Davin's eyes widened, then narrowed in grim understanding. No. Gods, no. But someone did. In that moment, the truth struck Jaime like a blade. The rebellion had been born within their own blood. He rallied what men he could and fought his way toward the lower halls, but the tunnels ran thick with smoke and the cries of dying men. The Ironborn had seized the armory, and the red lion banners were already burning. Amidst the din, Jaime saw him, Euron Greyjoy, striding through the chaos like a specter of death, his axe dripping red. "Kingslayer," he bellowed, "come win yourself another crown." Jaime met him in the great stairway of the rock. Their blades clashed, steel on steel, echoing like thunder. Euron fought with the wild strength of a storm, laughing as he swung. Jaime parried, countered, drove him back a step, but the Ironborn was relentless. "You traded your pride for mercy," Euron taunted, "and look what it's bought you." Jaime's sword flashed. "A chance to end men like you." They fought until their arms bled and the air grew thick with ash. At last, Jaime fainted low, driving his golden hand into Euron's jaw with all his strength. Bone cracked. The Ironborn staggered, and Jaime's sword found his throat. Euron fell, choking laughter spilling from his lips even as his lifeblood poured out. The sea, always, takes what it's owed. He died smiling. The battle raged until nightfall. When it ended, the harbor was littered with corpses and wreckage. Half the Iron Fleet burned, and half of Casterly Rock lay in ruin. Jaime stood upon the ramparts once more, the wind howling around him. Below, the survivors tended the wounded. Dragons wheeled in the dark, their cries fading into the distance. Tyrion found him there, face streaked with soot and sorrow. "The Queen has withdrawn her host inland," he said. "She means to march on King's Landing. She'll leave a garrison here, but she expects you to hold the west." Jaime looked out over the smoking sea. "There's nothing left to hold." Tyrion's voice was low. "Then build anew, brother. From ashes, if you must." But Jaime did not answer. He could feel it in his bones. The rock was dying. And somewhere beyond the waves, Cersei Lannister sharpened her vengeance like a blade. The war between dragon and lion had begun, but the greater war, the one within the blood of Lannister itself, was only beginning to roar. Smoke clung to the sea for days after the battle. It rolled over the cliffs and crept into the mountain's heart, mingling with the scent of death and iron. The waves beat softly against the charred remains of ships that would never sail again. Above them, the banners of House Lannister hung in tatters, their golden lions dim beneath the soot. Jaime Lannister limped through the ruin. His sword arm was bound, his golden hand streaked black. He had fought until the last bell of sunset and still could not remember how the battle had ended. Only the screams, the fire, and the dull, unyielding weight of loss. The harbor was a graveyard. Iron-born corpses lay tangled with the bodies of his own men, their armor rusting in the tide. Smoke drifted from the pyres where the dead were burned, the flames casting long shadows across the blood-slick stones. Tyrion found him there, standing alone amid the ruin. "You look as though you've seen the stranger himself," he said. "Perhaps I have," Jaime replied quietly. "He looked a good deal like my father." Tyrion gave a weary smile. "Tywin would be proud. You saved the rock after all." "Did I?" Jaime gestured toward the blackened harbor. "There's nothing left to save." The smaller man said nothing for a long while. "Daenerys means to march east," he said at last. "She leaves tomorrow. She believes your sister will strike again soon, and she's not wrong." Jaime turned his gaze to the horizon, where the smoke thinned into the pale morning sky. "Cersei never yields. She'll burn the world before she bends the knee." Tyrion studied him. "And what will you do when that day comes?" "I'll do what I must." "Always what you must, never what you want," Tyrion murmured. "You've been bound by duty your entire life, Jaime. Even your sins were done for someone else." "Perhaps," Jaime said, his voice cold. "But it changes nothing now." He left his brother standing among the ashes and returned to the halls of the Rock. The fortress that had once roared with laughter and song now echoed with the hollow tread of boots and the whispers of the uneasy. Daenerys' soldiers patrolled the corridors, unsullied and Dothraki both, silent as wraiths among the golden lions. Lady Jenna sat alone in the council chamber when he entered. The light from the high windows touched the silver in her hair, making her look like a statue carved from ice and fire. "You've given the rock to strangers," she said without turning, "and now you let them leave it in ruin." Jaime poured himself a cup of wine. "We didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. You just no longer make the ones that honor your name." He set the cup down. "Honor. I'm tired of that word. I've seen what honor brings. Ashes, corpses, and ghosts that never leave." She looked at him then, her eyes hard as stone. "Then you've forgotten what it means to be a Lannister." Jaime met her gaze without flinching. "No, Aunt. I remember too well." He left her there and made his way to the ramparts once more. The wind off the sea carried a chill that cut through his cloak. Far below, the last of the Dragon Queen's army was preparing to depart. Drogon's vast shape moved restlessly on the beach, wings stirring the air like thunder. Daenerys herself stood beside the creature, her hair bright against the blackness of his scales. Tyrion was with her, speaking softly. When she looked up and saw Jaime on the wall, her eyes met his across the distance. There was no anger there, no triumph, only a solemn understanding between two soldiers weary of endless war. When she rode away that evening, the rock felt emptier than ever. Night fell heavy and quiet. Jaime sat in his father's old solar, the fire guttering low in the hearth. He held a piece of parchment in his hands, a letter sealed in wax stamped with a lion's head. It had arrived at dusk by Raven, bearing no name upon its face. He broke the seal. "To my brother, the blood you share with me is the only reason you still draw breath. You opened our gates to the Dragon Queen and call it mercy. But mercy is weakness, and weakness is death. You may think yourself free of me, but you will never be free of what we are. I am coming for the rock, Jaime. I will tear down every stone if I must. When I am done, no one will remember your mercy, only your betrayal. Cersei of House Lannister, Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. He read it twice, then set it down beside the dying fire. For a long while he stared at the flames, listening to the wind howl beyond the windows. Cersei was coming. At dawn, the first scouts arrived bearing word that Euron Greyjoy's surviving ships had vanished eastward. Davin came to Jaime's chambers, his armor scorched and dented. "She'll bring what's left of the fleet," he said, "and she'll bring gold cloaks from the city. The queen won't rest until you're hanging from the rock's gate." Jaime tightened his cloak and stepped past him. "Then we'll be ready." "Ready?" Davin barked a harsh laugh. "Half the garrison's dead. The rest can barely hold a spear. What do you plan to fight her with? Ashes and ghosts?" "With whatever I have left." They descended into the great courtyard where the survivors of the battle had gathered. Men leaned on broken spears, their armor patched with blood and soot. Some bore the lion on their breastplates, others the dragon's red sigil. Jaime stood before them. "You all saw what war brings," he said. "Fire, death, ruin. My sister would bring that again, and more. I won't let her." A murmur rose from the men, uncertain but loyal. Davin stepped forward. "You mean to stand against the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms?" "I mean to stand against madness," Jaime said. "If that means standing against my own blood, so be it." Word spread through the rock by nightfall. The Kingslayer would defend the West against the Queen. Some cursed his name, others whispered prayers. That night, Jaime dreamed of the Red Keep. He saw the throne room filled with fire and Cersei seated upon the Iron Throne, her crown melting, her smile unbroken. Beside her stood their father's ghost, silent and proud. And in her hands, she held not a scepter, but a torch. When he awoke, the air smelled of smoke. The sentries were shouting from the walls. Torches gleamed along the eastern horizon, dozens, then hundreds. The sea was black with sails. Cersei had come. Her banners, gold lions upon crimson fields, fluttered above the ships, carried on the night wind like a promise of wrath. The horns of war echoed across the cliffs once more. Jaime drew his sword. The steel caught the firelight and gleamed red. "Sound the bells," he said. "Let the rock remember who defends it." As the bells tolled, deep and solemn, Jaime looked eastward and saw the truth of it at last. The Lannisters had no enemies left to fight but themselves. The house built on gold and glory would now be measured in blood, and the power that had raised it so high would be the very power that devoured it whole. The night burned red as the banners of House Lannister unfurled once more against their own walls. The sea below Casterly Rock was black with ships, their sails gleaming gold in the torchlight, their oars striking the water with the rhythm of war. From the highest tower, the rock seemed to breathe fire, the glow of hundreds of beacons and watchfires casting its shadows far out across the bay. Jaime Lannister watched it all from the battlements, his cloak whipping in the cold wind. He could see the shapes of Cersei's warships arrayed beyond the cliffs, the glitter of their lanterns mirrored in the dark waves. A fleet greater than any since the days of the Targaryens now stood before his home, and at its head flew the Lion of the Rock, the same sigil he had fought for all his life. Beside him, Sir Davin's face was grim. "They've brought rams and catapults," he said, "and more men than we have arrows. They'll find the rock a hard meal to swallow," Jaime replied. "Not hard enough," Davin muttered. In the distance, a horn sounded, long and low, rolling across the sea. Jaime knew that call. It was the same tone that had heralded Lannister victory at the Trident, the same note that had rung through the streets of King's Landing when his father's army took the city. Only now it came for him. Cersei's vengeance had come home. "Signal the archers," Jaime ordered. "Hold until they land, then fire at will. I want the harbor sealed before dawn." The men hurried to obey. Below, fires sprang to life along the cliffs where the siege engines stood ready. Great scorpions creaked into place, their bolts glinting wickedly in the torchlight. Yet for every preparation, Jaime felt the weight of doom pressing closer. He had defended castles before, had seen the ruin of war again and again, but this was different. This was his house turned upon itself. Every soldier beneath his command was fighting against kin, every death a lion's own claw cutting into its flesh. By midnight, the first wave came ashore. The silence before the clash was brief and terrible. Then came the cry of horns, the thunder of boots, the crash of steel upon shield. The beach below the rock became a sea of fire and blood. The loyalists fought like cornered beasts, hurling flaming oil and stones from the cliffs, while below them, the gold-cloaked soldiers of King's Landing surged forward in waves, their armor shining crimson under the flames. "Loose!" Jaime shouted, and 100 bows sang as one. Arrows rained down, cutting through the tide of men. The sea turned black with bodies. But still they came. The battle raged until the night grew pale with dawn. The air was thick with smoke, the stench of burning pitch and salt. Jaime moved among his men, sword in hand, fighting where the line threatened to break. His golden hand was slick with soot and blood, his arm aching from the weight of his blade. Somewhere below, the sound of horns changed, a deeper, mournful tone. Jaime turned toward the sea and felt his heart freeze. A great engine had been brought forth upon one of Cersei's largest ships, an enormous scorpion, larger than any he had ever seen. Its iron arms stretched high into the air, and upon its frame lay a bolt tipped in black steel, longer than a horse. He followed its aim, not at the walls, not at the battlements, but higher, toward the cliffs where Drogon slept. "Gods," Jaime breathed. "They're going to..." The engine fired. The bolt streaked through the sky, cutting the air with a scream. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. Then a roar split the heavens, louder than thunder. Drogon's cry shook the very stones beneath Jaime's feet. The beast lurched into the sky, black wings beating furiously, fire spilling from its throat. Another bolt struck, then another. The dragon twisted, flame erupting from his wounds as he crashed against the cliffs. The force of it sent rocks tumbling, and the shock rippled through the fortress like an earthquake. Men screamed. Fires burst across the parapets. Jaime was thrown to the ground as the world roared around him. When he rose again, the sky was alight. Drogon had fallen to the sea, his body burning upon the waves like a dying sun. The rock shuddered with each crash of his wings against the water, until, at last, the light faded and the sound was gone. Silence fell, broken only by the distant cheers of Cersei's fleet. Tyrion came running across the courtyard, his face pale with horror. "The dragon! Jaime, they've slain it!" Jaime leaned upon his sword, chest heaving. "Then the queen will rain hell upon them for it." "She's not here," Tyrion said. "Her host marches on the capital. We are alone." For a moment, the weight of those words hung between them. Alone, against Cersei, against the sea, against their own blood. Jaime turned toward the burning horizon. "Then we hold," he said quietly. "As long as we can." They did hold, through that day and the next, and another after that. The siege ground on like a relentless tide. Arrows and fire filled the air. Stones shattered against the walls. and the screams of the wounded echoed through the tunnels. Food dwindled, water fouled. The wounded lay in rows along the lower halls, their moans rising like a dirge. Each night, Jaime walked among them, his heart heavy with the faces of those he could not save. On the fourth night, as storm clouds gathered once more over the sea, a messenger found him in the war room. The man's armor was scorched, his eyes wide with dread. "My lord," he stammered, "the enemy has breached the lower gate." Jaime stared at him. "How?" "They had help. From within." Betrayal. Again. He took up his sword and strode through the corridors toward the lower levels. Flames licked at the walls, and the air was thick with smoke. In the chaos, he saw familiar faces. Men he had fought beside now turning their blades on their own kin, their eyes filled with desperation. And at the heart of it all, he found Davin. His cousin stood before the gate, blood upon his hands, surrounded by a handful of rebels. The door behind him stood wide, and beyond it poured Cersei's soldiers. "Davin," Jaime said, his voice low. "Tell me this isn't your doing." Davin's face was grim. "It is. The Queen offers peace. The rock need not burn again. Surrender, Jaime. It's over. She'll kill us all." "Not if you kneel." Jaime shook his head slowly. "I knelt once for mercy. There's none left to give." They stood facing one another, two lions in the dark. Outside, thunder rolled and the sea howled. Then steel met steel, and the air filled with sparks. Jaime fought with all that remained in him. Davin was younger, stronger, uninjured, but Jaime's fury burned deeper than pain. Their blades clashed again and again until, with a cry, Jaime struck his cousin's sword aside and drove his own through his breastplate. Davin fell to his knees, eyes wide with disbelief. Blood stained the lion on his chest. "I told you," Jaime whispered, lowering him to the ground. "The gods won't save lions from themselves." When he looked up, the enemy was pouring through the gate. The rock was falling. By dawn, the Lannister banners had been torn down, their golden lions trampled in the mud. Jaime stood upon the highest tower, watching as the last of his men were dragged below in chains. The sky was gray, the sea still burning with the fires of battle. He could see her fleet drawing closer to the harbor, Cersei's flagship among them, its red sails unfurled like the wings of some monstrous bird. Jaime turned to Tyrion, who stood beside him, face ashen. "She's coming for us both," Jaime said. Tyrion nodded slowly. "Then perhaps it's time we stopped running." Far below, the horns of Cersei's army sounded once more, and as the echoes rolled through the hollow halls of Casterly Rock, Jaime Lannister felt the end draw near, an end written not in the steel of enemies, but in the pride of lions who had devoured their own hearts. The sea was gray as steel, and the wind blew cold from the west, carrying with it the salt of tears and the scent of death. When the sun rose over Casterly Rock that morning, it found the great fortress blackened by smoke and broken by war. The once mighty seat of House Lannister stood wounded, its proud towers cracked, its golden gates smeared with blood and ash. Jaime Lannister watched the horizon from the ramparts. Far below, Cersei's fleet lay anchored in the bay, its ranks of ships like a forest of masts. The red sails of the Queen's flagship, the Maiden's Fury, snapped in the wind, and the golden lion of Lannister gleamed upon its prow. She had come at last. Behind Jaime, Tyrion stood in silence, cloak drawn tight against the cold. The brothers had not spoken since the fall of the gate. There were no words left that could mend what had been done. "How long until they make landfall?" Tyrion asked at last. "Before noon," Jaime said. "She'll want to march before the light fades." "And what then?" Jaime did not answer. He gripped the hilt of his sword and looked down upon the sea. He remembered another dawn long ago, the morning after King's Landing burned. He had walked through streets of ash, past the corpses of men and women his sword could not save. He had thought he'd seen the worst of war then. He had been wrong. Cersei always loved the rock, Tyrion said softly. Even as children, she'd climb the highest cliffs and claim she could see the world from there. Perhaps that's why she'll burn it now. She can't bear to lose what was once hers. She'll burn more than that before she's done, Jaime said. The wind rose, whipping through their hair. Below, the harbor stirred with movement, longboats cutting through the waves, carrying soldiers clad in crimson and gold. Jaime turned from the parapet. "Ready the men," he said. "We meet her at the gate." He descended through the ruined halls, past shattered statues and fallen banners. The once grand corridors echoed with the weary shuffle of the few who still stood beside him. They were not many, 200, perhaps 3, but their faces were hard and their eyes burned with a quiet fury. At the base of the gatehouse, Jaime found his armor waiting, steel and crimson, scuffed from battle but still gleaming faintly where the light touched it. As he fastened the straps, Tyrion approached once more. "You can still go," the dwarf said. "Take a horse, flee east. She won't chase you." "I won't run," Jaime said. "Not from her. You'll die." Jaime smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but I've done worse things than die." The sound of horns rose from the cliffs. The enemy had landed. From the shadows of the courtyard came Lady Jenna, flanked by a handful of surviving retainers. Her face was pale, her eyes lined with exhaustion, but her voice was firm. "Cersei will show no mercy," she said. "If you open the gates, she'll still have you flayed. If you hold them, she'll burn you alive." "Then I'll die with my honor intact," Jaime said. "Honor?" Her mouth tightened. "Honor is for the dead, nephew, and soon you'll join them." Before he could reply, a shout echoed from the walls. "They're at the gate!" Jaime mounted the steps to the battlements. From there, he saw her, Cersei Lannister, standing tall at the head of her host, a crown of gold upon her brow and fury burning in her eyes. Her armor gleamed like molten fire, her cloak snapping in the wind. At her side rode Qyburn and Sir Gregor Clegane, silent and monstrous. She raised her hand, and the trumpets of her army fell silent. Her voice carried across the field like a blade. "Jaime," she called. "Kingslayer, traitor to your blood." He stepped forward, the wind catching his cloak. "You brought this upon us, Cersei. The war, the ruin, everything. You brought shame," she spat. "You bent the knee to a foreign queen. You let our home be defiled by dragons. I saved our people. You damned them," she said, "and now you'll pay the price." She turned to her army. "Take the rock." The horns sounded again, and the host surged forward. The siege began in earnest. Arrows flew, catapults groaned, and fire lit the sky. The walls of the rock trembled beneath the assault. Jaime moved through the chaos, shouting orders, rallying the men wherever the line began to waver. Tyrion fought beside him, crossbow in hand, his aim true and steady despite the madness around them. But Cersei's numbers were too great. The gold cloaks poured through the breaches, cutting down all who stood before them. The courtyard became a slaughterhouse of steel and screams. Jaime's sword flashed red, his golden hand striking like a hammer. But for every foe he felled, 2 more rose in their place. At last, he heard her voice again, close now, within the gate. "Jaime." He turned. Cersei stood amid the ruin, her blade drawn, her face pale with rage and grief. "Stand aside," she said. "Don't make me kill you." You already have, he said, 100 times over. Then once more will make no difference. They circled one another in the blood-soaked courtyard, the battle raging around them. The air shimmered with heat and smoke. Jaime's heart pounded as he met her gaze. Those green eyes he had once loved beyond reason, now cold as emerald glass. I never wanted this, he said. You always wanted me, she hissed, even now. He lunged, their swords clashing with a ring that echoed through the hall. The fight was fierce, desperate. She was faster than he remembered, her strikes fueled by fury and madness. He parried, countered, drove her back a step, but she came again, relentless. You swore to protect me, she cried. I swore to protect the innocent, he answered, striking hard. Their blades locked, faces inches apart. Her smile was terrible. There are no innocents left. Then she drove her dagger forward. It struck the golden plate upon his chest, sliding between the joints. Pain flared hot through his ribs. Jaime staggered, gasping, but even as he fell, his sword flashed. Cersei's eyes widened. She looked down to see the steel that had found her heart. For a moment, neither spoke. Jaime caught her as she fell. The battle faded around them. The clash of steel, the shouts, the thunder of the siege, all distant, unimportant. Her breath came shallow. You should have stayed with me, she whispered. I'm here, he said softly. Always. Her fingers brushed his cheek, then fell limp. He held her until the light went out of her eyes. When he rose, the courtyard was silent. The fighting had stopped. Cersei's soldiers, seeing their queen fall, threw down their arms. The war was over. Not with victory, but with loss. Tyrion approached, blood upon his face, his expression unreadable. Is she? Jaime nodded. Tyrion looked toward the sea. Then House Lannister is done. Perhaps, Jaime said, or perhaps this is its beginning. He looked down at Cersei's still form, her golden hair spread across the stone like a fallen crown. For the first time in years, he felt the weight lift from his shoulders. Not peace, but something quieter, sadder. The rock would endure, as it always had. But the pride that built it had been broken at last. Jaime turned toward the horizon, where the sun rose blood-red over the sea. And though the wind carried the smoke of ruin through the halls of his house, he thought, for a fleeting moment, that he heard the faintest whisper of lions, crying not in rage, but in mourning. The storm passed, but its echo lingered. For 3 days and nights, rain swept the western coast, washing the blood from the stones and the soot from the sea. The air grew cool, the sky pale and clean, as if the world itself sought to forget the horror it had just witnessed. Within the halls of Casterly Rock, silence ruled. The banners hung still, their crimson edges damp from the mist. The scent of smoke and death had faded, replaced by the heavy stillness of aftermath. Jaime Lannister stood alone in the great hall before the dais, where his father's throne had once stood. Cersei's body lay upon the stone before it, draped in a crimson shroud embroidered with golden lions. She had been laid there at dawn, her crown placed upon her breast, her sword at her side. The hall was empty save for Tyrion, who lingered in the shadows near the pillars. Neither brother spoke. Jaime looked down at his sister's face, now pale as wax. Her beauty faded into something cold and distant. She looked almost peaceful, as if sleep had reclaimed her at last. He remembered her laughter when they were children, the way she dared him to climb higher, run faster, dream greater. That girl had been gone for many years, devoured by the woman she became, the queen, the mother, the tyrant. She looks almost like herself again, Tyrion said at length. his voice low. "When she isn't speaking." Jaime did not answer. His golden hand brushed the edge of her shroud, tracing the thread of the lion's mane. "What will you do with her?" Tyrion asked. "Bury her," Jaime said, "beside our father." "Do you think he'd have wanted that?" "She was his legacy," Jaime said. "For better or worse." Tyrion gave a bitter laugh. "Then mostly worse." The brothers stood in silence for a while. The wind moaned through the broken windows above, and the fire in the hearth sputtered weakly. "Daenerys will send for you soon," Tyrion said. "You know that, don't you? She'll demand to know why the West bleeds again, why dragons died, why her peace was bought with fire. Then she'll have her answer," Jaime said. "The truth, for once. And after?" Jaime looked toward the shattered doors at the end of the hall. "After, I'll leave this place." Tyrion's brow furrowed. "Leave? To where?" "Anywhere that isn't here. The rock is cursed, Tyrion. Every stone reeks of our pride and our sins. Let the wind have it." "You would abandon your home?" "I would set it free," Jaime said softly. "Let it fall to ruin if it must. It's all we ever built." The words fell heavy between them. Tyrion looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps ruin is the only mercy left to us." That night, the rain ceased, and a pale moon rose over the sea. Jaime oversaw the burial himself. The tomb of Tywin Lannister stood deep beneath the rock, its floor lined with gold-veined stone, its walls carved with the faces of ancient kings. He laid Cersei beside their father, setting her crown upon her breast once more. When the slab was sealed, he stood before it for a long while, his torch flickering in the dark. "We were meant to be lions," he murmured. "But lions that feed on each other leave only bones behind." When he turned to leave, he did not notice the shadow that watched him from the tunnel mouth, a tall, thin figure cloaked in gray. Only later would he remember the faint scent of myrrh and the whisper of silk. The next morning, a raven arrived. It bore the sigil of the Targaryen queen, black wax stamped with three-headed flame. Jaime broke the seal and read, "Ser Jaime of House Lannister, the war is ended. The Iron Throne stands empty. I have declared my reign over the 7 kingdoms from the Red Keep, yet the West remains unclaimed. Come to King's Landing. Swear your fealty before the realm, and House Lannister shall endure. Refuse, and you will stand alone in ruin." Daenerys of the House Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men. He read the letter twice before setting it down. Tyrion was watching him from across the chamber. "She'll kill you if you refuse," Tyrion said. "Then I'll die on my feet," Jaime answered. "You've done enough dying for one life." Jaime looked up at him. "And what would you have me do? Bend the knee again? Trade one master for another?" "Survive," Tyrion said simply. "If not for yourself, then for what little good you still might do." That night, Jaime walked the ramparts. The sea was calm once more, the waves glimmering beneath the moonlight. The ruins of the battle still scarred the shore, but already nature was reclaiming it. Seaweed winding through broken spears, gulls nesting among shattered stone. He heard footsteps behind him. Lady Jenna emerged from the shadows, her cloak drawn close. Her face was lined, but her eyes held the same fierce clarity they always had. "I heard you mean to leave," she said. "I do." "Then hear me before you go." She stepped closer, her voice firm. "You think the rock dies with us, but it doesn't. Stones remember, Jaime. Blood remembers. The name Lannister will outlive us all. Whether it's whispered in shame or sung in pride, that's for you to decide." Jaime studied her for a moment. "There's no pride left to save." "There's always pride. she said. "It's what keeps us standing after everything else falls away." He nodded once, then turned to the sea again. "If pride is all we have, then perhaps that's the curse that binds us." She left him there, and when the dawn came, he rode east. The journey took him through the war-torn lands of the Westerlands, where burned villages still smoldered and fields lay barren. The people he passed gave him wary looks. Some bowed, others spat. None called him Kingslayer now. To them, he was simply another relic of a broken house. When at last he reached the Riverlands, he found them no better. Bandits roamed freely, lords hid behind their crumbling keeps, and the rivers themselves ran shallow and foul. The realm had endured too many wars, and even the land seemed weary of blood. At a small inn along the banks of the Blackwater, Jaime rested his horse. He sat alone in the corner, cloak drawn, wine untouched. The fire burned low, and the murmur of voices filled the room. He listened without meaning to, hearing whispers of dragons, of a queen who ruled with flame and fear, of rebellion already stirring anew. He thought of Cersei, of his father, of every oath he had ever sworn and broken, and he wondered if any man born to power could escape its poison. When he rose to leave, the innkeeper's boy called after him, "Sir, they say the queen seeks the last lion. You'd best keep to the shadows." Jaime paused at the door. "The last lion?" he asked. The boy nodded. "Aye, they say the rest are dead." Jaime looked back toward the fire, where the smoke curled upward like a dying spirit. "Then let the last lion roam," he said quietly. "The cage is broken." He stepped out into the dawn, the wind carrying the smell of rain and salt. Somewhere beyond the horizon, dragons ruled and men still dreamed of thrones. But Jaime Lannister rode east into the gray morning, leaving the rock, the crown, and his cursed name behind. And though the songs would one day tell of the lion's fall, none would know that in that quiet hour, the last of House Lannister rode not in shame, but in search of peace, a thing rarer than gold and far more costly. The road east wound through mist and ruin. Fields once golden lay fallow and gray beneath the winter sky, and the trees along the roadside stood like ghosts, bare, brittle, their branches reaching upward in silent supplication. Jaime Lannister rode through this desolation with his cloak drawn tight and his sword slung low at his hip. His armor bore no sigil now, no roaring lion to proclaim his name. The world had grown small for men like him. He had not spoken to another soul in many days. The villages he passed were hollow things, their doors barred, their hearths cold. A few still bore the marks of war, charred beams, broken gates, and the faint smell of death that never quite left such places. Once, the small folk had called out greetings to the knights of Lannister patrols. Now, when they glimpsed him, they hid their faces and shut their windows. At dusk, he came to a river crossing where the bridge had half collapsed into the torrent below. A single rider waited on the far bank, his cloak dark as a crow's wing. Jaime slowed his horse, watching. The stranger raised a hand in greeting, or warning. "You ride east," the man called across the rushing water. "There's no safety that way, only war." Jaime reined in. Then the world's the same in every direction. The stranger smiled faintly. "You sound like a man who's lost something." "I've lost everything," Jaime said, "but I still ride." The man inclined his head. "Then you'll need a guide. The roads to King's Landing are not what they once were." "King's Landing?" Jaime studied him. "How do you know where I ride?" The stranger's eyes gleamed beneath his hood. "Because there's nowhere else left for lions to go." Jaime hesitated only a moment before urging his horse across the broken bridge. When he reached the far side, the man turned and rode ahead without another word. They traveled in silence for a time, the only sounds the creak of saddles and the whisper of wind. The stranger's movements were fluid, his bearing calm, but alert. He wore no sigil, and his sword was plain, though well kept. Jaime could not tell whether he was knight, outlaw, or something in between. As the sun sank, they made camp beside the river. The man built a small fire and set a pot of water to boil. "You never gave your name," Jaime said at last. The man stirred the pot, his expression unreadable. "Names have a way of dying in times like these, but once I was called Sandor." Jaime looked up sharply. "The hound is dead." "Perhaps," the man said. "Or perhaps he's what's left when a man kills all he was and can't quite die with it." For a while, neither spoke. The fire crackled between them, sparks rising into the dark. "You rode with the Dragon Queen," Jaime said. Sandor's eyes flicked to him. "Aye, for a time, long enough to see what fire does to flesh." "She's still at King's Landing?" "She rules it now, if ruling's the word for it." He spat into the dirt. A throne of skulls would suit her better than that heap of melted swords. Jaime stared into the flames. "Then there's no peace waiting for me there." "There's no peace anywhere, Kingslayer," Sandor said. "But there's reckoning. You'll find that." The next days passed in uneasy companionship. They rode through ravaged villages, where the smell of smoke still lingered and the fields lay salted by soldiers' boots. Once, they came upon a band of deserters who mistook Jaime for a rich knight. Sandor cut them down before they could draw their blades, moving with the brutal grace of a wolf. "Still killing?" Jaime asked as they rode on. "Only when I must," Sandor said. "Same as breathing." When they reached the Trident, they found the river swollen with spring melt. The old stone bridge was gone, replaced by a ferry guarded by soldiers bearing the black and red banners of House Targaryen. The men eyed them warily as they crossed, but Jaime kept his head bowed and his hood drawn. His golden hand stayed hidden beneath his cloak. Beyond the river, the land began to rise, the hills crowned with ruins and the burned carcasses of old keeps. Every mile brought more soldiers, more patrols wearing the sigil of the dragon. At last, from a high ridge, Jaime saw King's Landing spread before him, a scarred, smoking shadow of the city he remembered. The walls had been rebuilt with blackened stone, the gates hung with banners bearing the dragon, and the words, "Fire" and "Justice." Smoke still drifted from the ruins beyond the harbor. The Red Keep rose above it all, its towers blackened and melted by the breath of dragons. "You still mean to go in?" Sandor asked. Jaime nodded. "There's one thing left I must do." "Then go," Sandor said. "I've seen enough queens to last me 10 lifetimes. I'll head north. There's quieter country there, and colder graves." They clasped hands briefly. "You're not the man you were," Jaime said. Sandor's grin was rough but real. "Neither are you, but maybe that's not such a curse." And with that, the hound rode north, leaving the last Lannister to face the city that had ended so many kings. At the gates of King's Landing, the guards let Jaime pass without question. The years of war had changed him. The gold hair had turned to gray at the temples, and the lines upon his face spoke of weariness more than pride. He walked the streets in silence, seeing ghosts at every turn. The market where Ned Stark had died, the square where wildfire had burned men to ash. The city smelled of ash and iron and fear. When he reached the Red Keep, he found its great doors open. Inside, the throne room was quiet save for the echo of his steps. The Iron Throne stood as it always had, dark, jagged, terrible. But it was no longer Daenerys who sat upon it. Instead, a council of nobles and soldiers surrounded the dais. At its center stood a tall, gaunt man with hair as white as frost. Behind him hung a banner of a golden lion, half burned, half restored. "Sir Jaime of House Lannister," the man said, "you've come at last." Jaime stared. "You serve the queen?" The man smiled thinly. "There is no queen. Daenerys Targaryen is dead, slain by her own kin in the night. The realm bleeds still, but the dragons are gone." "Then who rules?" "The council rules," the man said. "For now, until another war decides otherwise." Jaime's eyes moved to the throne. The blades that made it gleamed faintly in the dim light. He remembered the day he had slain Aerys, the Mad King, to save the city from fire. Now he stood again before the seat of power, and again it stank of death. He turned away. "I want no part of this," the man called after him. "Where will you go, Lannister? There's nothing left for you beyond these walls." Jaime paused at the door. "Then I'll go where there's nothing left," he said. "It suits me." He left the throne room as he had entered, alone. When night fell, he rode out through the city's eastern gate, his horse's hooves striking sparks on the cobbles. Behind him, the Red Keep loomed against the starlit sky, its windows glimmering like the eyes of some dying beast. He did not look back. The road stretched eastward into the dark, leading to lands unknown. The wars of kings and queens, of dragons and lions, would rage again in the songs of others, but Jaime Lannister would not be among them. He rode on beneath the moon, a lone knight with a tarnished name, bound not by oaths or crowns, but by the faint hope that somewhere beyond the ashes of the world, peace might still be found. And in the quiet that followed, the sea whispered against the cliffs far behind him, carrying with it the fading echo of a lion's roar. The night pressed close around him as Jaime Lannister rode eastward from King's Landing. The moon hung low and pale, casting the world in silver and shadow. The air smelled of damp earth and smoke, the scent of a realm half healed from its wounds, half rotten from the wars that had burned it hollow. He rode until the road turned to mud, until the sound of the sea faded behind him. When dawn came, pale and cold, he found himself upon a lonely stretch of the Rose Road where the fields grew wild and the stones of old keeps jutted from the earth like broken teeth. His horse snorted wearily, its breath steaming in the chill. Jaime dismounted and let the animal graze while he sat upon a fallen log, his cloak wrapped close around his shoulders. He had not slept in 2 nights. When he closed his eyes, he saw Cersei, her face pale in death, her golden hair matted with blood. He heard her voice still, whispering that they had come into this world together and should leave it the same way. He had broken that promise, though not by choice. He wondered if she waited for him beyond, or if her soul still clung to the rock, restless and furious as she had been in life. The world had grown quieter since the dragon's fall. No more fire upon the sky, no more thrones to bleed for. The realm was ruled by councils now, weak men and weary women trying to hold what was left together. But peace, Jaime thought, was only another kind of war, fought with whispers instead of blades. When he rose to continue his journey, he saw a shape on the horizon, a rider approaching at steady pace. The figure wore a cloak the color of ash, and the horse beneath him moved with a familiar grace. Jaime rested his hand on his sword hilt. The rider slowed as he neared. "You're far from home, sir," he said, his voice deep and rasping. "I have no home," Jaime replied. The man laughed softly. "Aye, that makes 2 of us." He drew back his hood, revealing a face weathered by years and war, a face Jaime recognized. Sir Brienne of Tarth had once spoken of him, though never kindly. The man who stood before him bore her features in part, though rougher, more worn. "Podrick Payne," Jaime said. "You've aged." Podrick inclined his head. "And you've lived. That makes us both rare creatures in this age." "I thought you'd stayed with her," Jaime said. "She died last winter," Podrick replied quietly. "In the Riverlands. Bandits. She saved a dozen villagers before they cut her down." Jaime bowed his head. "Then the gods gained more than they deserve." "She spoke of you," Podrick said. "Said she'd seen the best of you, though you'd hidden it well." Jaime smiled faintly, a sad, crooked thing. "She was kind enough to lie." The two men rode together through the day, saying little. They passed small hamlets where children stared from doorways and old men tended half-burned fields. In one, they shared bread with a farmer's family who had never heard of the Iron Throne. The father told them that wolves had returned to the western woods and that traders spoke of ghosts wandering the ruins of Casterly Rock. Jaime said nothing, but in his heart he believed it. That night, they camped beside a stream. Podrick cleaned his blade while Jaime sat gazing into the water. The reflection that stared back at him was older than he remembered, his hair streaked with gray, his eyes hollow. "I rode for honor once," Jaime said. "For love, for family, for the realm. But in the end, it all burns the same." Podrick looked at him. "And what do you ride for now?" Jaime turned his golden hand, watching the moonlight catch upon it. "Forgiveness, perhaps, though I doubt it waits for me." "Maybe not," Podrick said, "but peace might." Before dawn, Jaime woke to the sound of wings. He sat up, hand on his sword, but saw only a great black crow perched upon a nearby branch. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness. It cawed once, sharp and harsh, then took flight eastward. Jaime watched it go, a strange unease settling in his chest. They rode again that morning, following the road through rolling fields until they came to a place where the land dipped low and the ruins of an old sept stood half-buried in vines. Its seven-pointed star had long since fallen, and moss crept over its walls. A stone statue lay toppled beside the door, the mother, her hands broken. "Shall we rest?" Podrick asked. Jaime nodded. They tethered their horses and entered. Inside, the air was cool and still. Shafts of light fell through cracks in the roof, catching dust motes that drifted like ash. The altar was bare, save for a single candle, still burning. Someone was here. A figure stepped from the shadows, cloaked and hooded. "You should not have come here, sir," the stranger said. "The gods are deaf to lions." Jaime's hand went to his sword. "Who are you?" The hood fell back, and the firelight caught a face he knew, a face thought long dead. Tyrion. His brother looked older, thinner, his beard streaked with gray, but his eyes were the same, sharp, weary, and endlessly knowing. "I told you to bend the knee," Tyrion said. "You never were good at following sense." Jaime took a step forward. "I heard you'd fled across the narrow sea." "I did, and came back, as fools always do." "What are you doing here?" Tyrion smiled faintly. "Seeking what's left of us. What's left of anything." He glanced toward Podrick. "You've brought company." "Friends are rare these days," Jaime said. "Family rarer still," Tyrion replied. He poured wine from a skin and held it out. "Drink with me, brother. Once more, for the ghosts." They drank. The wine was sour but strong, burning down to the heart. For a long time, they said nothing. The silence between them filled with all the words they'd never spoken. At last, Tyrion set down his cup. "You could come with me. I'm bound for Old Town, the maester's whisper of rebuilding the realm, without kings, without queens. A mad dream, perhaps, but one that might yet outlive us. Jaime looked toward the ruined altar, where the candle guttered in the draught. No, my road ends elsewhere. Tyrion nodded, as though he'd expected no other answer. Then may it end in peace, at least. They parted at dawn. Podrick rode north with Tyrion, bound for Old Town and the promise of a quieter life. Jaime watched them vanish down the road until the mist swallowed them. Then he turned east once more, following the path toward the Vale. The land grew rougher as he rode. Hills rose like great sleeping beasts, and the air grew thin and sharp. Sometimes he saw smoke curling in the distance, villages clinging to life in the shadow of old keeps. Once, he passed a field strewn with bones, the remnants of some forgotten battle. On the 5th day, he reached the edge of the Mountains of the Moon. There, he dismounted and gazed out over the vast, rugged land below. The wind tugged at his cloak, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and snow. It was quiet, so quiet he could almost believe the world at rest. He stood there a long while, watching the sun sink beyond the peaks. When darkness fell, he built no fire. The stars were bright, the air cold and clear. He lay back upon the grass and looked to the heavens, where the constellations wheeled like a tapestry of forgotten tales. Somewhere among them, he thought, the gods were watching, or perhaps not watching at all. Either way, Jaime Lannister, once the proudest of lions, closed his eyes beneath the endless sky and listened to the wind sigh through the mountains. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of the world lift, leaving only silence, and in that silence, something like peace. The wind sang through the passes of the Mountains of the Moon, a low, mournful tune that spoke of the end of things. Jaime Lannister rode alone, his horse's hooves clattering upon stone, the cold air cutting through his cloak. The world felt thinner here, emptier, as though the gods themselves had retreated from these peaks long ago. Each breath rose in white clouds. The path wound upward between sharp crags, past frozen streams and the bones of fallen trees. Sometimes he thought he heard whispers carried by the wind, voices from another life, faint and far away. His father's cold command, Cersei's laughter, Brienne's steady voice calling him Sir. He tried to push them away, but ghosts cling hard to those who have too many sins for company. He had eaten nothing since dawn. His horse stumbled often, weary and thin. They were both fading, though neither cared to admit it. Jaime had no destination, no banner, no name left to serve. The rock was ashes, the crown shattered, the war done and done again. When night fell, he found shelter in the ruins of a watchtower perched upon a ledge. Its stones were half swallowed by moss, its roof long gone. A single hearth still stood, blackened by centuries of fire. Jaime coaxed a small flame to life and sat beside it, his golden hand gleaming dully in the flicker. He took off his sword and laid it before him. The steel caught the light, and for a moment he saw his reflection in its edge, gray, lined, hollow-eyed. The Kingslayer, the Oathbreaker, the man who had saved a kingdom and lost his soul for it. He laughed softly to himself, though the sound was bitter. "What are you now, Jaime?" he murmured. "Knight? Kinslayer? Ghost?" The wind answered with a low moan, and for a heartbeat, he thought he heard a voice within it. All of these. None of these. He turned, half expecting to see someone standing there, but there was only the dark and the steady breathing of his horse outside. He shook his head and poured a measure of water into his cup. Perhaps he was going mad at last. It would be a fitting end. When he slept, he dreamed. He stood once more in the throne room of the Red Keep. The Iron Throne loomed before him, its blades glistening wetly in the light of 1,000 candles. At its foot lay the corpses of those he had loved and hated alike. Tywin, Cersei, Tyrion, all staring with lifeless eyes. The floor ran red with their blood. "Is this what you wanted?" a voice asked. He turned. A figure stood before the throne, cloaked in shadow. The shape of it was familiar, broad-shouldered, armored, with a sword in hand. When it stepped closer, he saw his own face staring back. "I wanted peace," Jaime said. "And did you find it?" his double asked. "Not yet." "Then you never will." The other Jaime raised his sword. A lion does not rest. He devours until nothing remains, not even himself. Steel flashed. Jaime felt a blade pierce his chest, and he woke with a gasp, clutching at his heart. The fire had died to embers. Dawn's first light crept through the cracks in the stones. His chest ached, though no wound marked it. The dream clung to him like frost. He rose, stiff and cold, and fed the last of his kindling to the flames. The horse stamped and whickered outside, restless. When he stepped beyond the tower, he saw what had disturbed it, a rider upon the trail below, climbing toward him. For a moment, he thought it another phantom. But as the figure drew near, he saw the sun glint off armor of black and silver. The stranger halted at the base of the ledge and raised a hand in greeting. "Sir Jaime of House Lannister," the man called. "You're a hard one to find." Jaime frowned. "Who are you?" "Once I served the Targaryens," the man said, dismounting. "Now I serve the realm. The council in King's Landing bids you return." "I've no realm left to serve." The knight climbed the slope, removing his helm. His hair was white as snow, his face weathered but proud. "You saved the realm once, Kingslayer. They ask you to do so again." Jaime's laugh was hollow. "They must be desperate." "They are," the knight said simply. "The queen is gone, the dragon's dead. But war brews again in the east, lords and would-be kings carving the realm apart. They need a symbol, someone to rally the broken banners." "I'm no symbol," Jaime said. "Only a man tired of fighting." The knight's gaze did not waver. "You're more than that. You're what remains, the last lion." Jaime turned away, staring out over the mountains. Below, the valleys stretched vast and empty, washed in gold by the rising sun. For a long time, neither man spoke. At last, Jaime said, "What would they have me do?" "Come south," the knight said. "Lend your name to the council. Bring peace, if peace can be bought." He almost laughed again, but something within him stirred, faint and stubborn. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps folly, or perhaps the old foolish hope that he might still set right what his house had broken. He turned back. "What is your name, sir?" "Sir Balon Swan," the man said. "I remember you," Jaime said. "You fought well once." "I still do," Swan replied. "Then ride with me." They descended from the mountain together, two old knights bound by ghosts and duty. As they rode, Jaime found himself thinking of Tyrion's words, of maesters and rebuilding, of a realm without kings. Perhaps such things could never be, but perhaps it was worth trying. By midday, they reached the foothills where the forest thickened. Swan spoke little, but when he did, his voice carried the weight of years. "They'll call you hero again, you know," he said. "They always do, when they've forgotten the truth." "Let them," Jaime said. "Names mean nothing now." They camped that night beside a river that glimmered like glass beneath the stars. The sound of water soothed him, soft and constant. "Why come for me?" Jaime asked as they shared bread by the fire. There are better men. Swan shook his head. Better swords, perhaps, not better men. Jaime looked into the flames. You're wrong about that. Perhaps, Swan said, but even broken swords can cut if wielded rightly. The words stayed with Jaime long after sleep took him. He dreamed again, not of fire this time, but of gold. Endless halls filled with light, where voices whispered of forgiveness. When dawn broke, he felt lighter than he had in years. He saddled his horse and rode on beside Cerballon, south toward the lands where the realm waited. Behind them, the mountains faded into mist. Ahead, the sun climbed high, turning the sky to pale flame. Jaime did not know what awaited him, whether redemption, ruin, or both. But for the first time since leaving the rock, he no longer felt alone. And as they rode down into the valley, he heard it faintly on the wind, a sound like a lion's low growl, proud and distant, echoing through the hills. Not rage, not hunger, but remembrance. Rain fell upon the riverlands like a benediction, washing the dust from the trees and turning the earth to dark, fertile mud. The storm had come swiftly, rolling down from the north in a gray wall of cloud. Jaime Lannister rode through it without complaint, his cloak soaked, his golden hand dulled by grime. Beside him, Sir Balon Swan rode silent and watchful, the hood of his black cloak drawn low. They had traveled for near a fortnight since leaving the mountains, following old roads long forgotten by lords and kings. The war had scarred the land deeply. Villages lay abandoned, their roofs caved and fields overgrown. Corpses of wagons and burned siege towers dotted the roadside like tombstones of another age. It was not peace they rode through, but the uneasy breath that comes before another storm. By night, they made camp beneath the ruins of septs and holdfasts. By day, they saw smoke in the distance, signs of raiders, of hungry men turned wolf. The crown had fallen, but chaos wore it gladly. Everywhere we ride, the realm looks smaller, Swan said one morning as they forded a swollen stream. Once we called it 7 kingdoms. Now I wonder if there's even one left whole. Jaime guided his horse through the current, water splashing against his greaves. 7-1. It was never whole, he said. It was only gold and fear holding the pieces together. Swan's jaw tightened. Gold and fear once built empires and broke them, Jaime said. My father proved both. They reached a crossroads by noon, where a weathered signpost leaned drunkenly in the mud. One arm pointed west toward Fairmarket, another east toward the Vale. The third, nearly illegible, pointed south to King's Landing. Swan studied the sign. Still sure you mean to go there? Jaime looked down the southern road, where the horizon vanished in mist. I don't know what I mean anymore, he said, only that I must see the end of what I began. They followed the southern road. That evening, they came upon a village half buried in reeds at the edge of a wide lake. Smoke rose from a few surviving chimneys, and a pale bell tolled faintly from a leaning sept. The air smelled of wet earth and rot, but also of bread, fresh, real bread. It was the first sign of life they had seen in days. As they rode in, children scattered, and old women peered through door cracks. One bold man approached, a pitchfork in hand. You're no Blackwood, nor Bracken, he said, squinting. What brings you here? Rain, Jaime said simply, and hunger. The man eyed the golden hand that caught what little light remained. His suspicion softened to awe. A night, then? Once, Jaime said. They were given a corner of the common hall to rest. The roof leaked, the benches were rough, and the stew thin as water. But it was warm. Jaime ate quietly while Swan questioned the villagers. "The Queen's men pass through sometimes," the old headman said, stirring the pot. "They speak of a council in the city, say they mean to rebuild. But others come too, men with lions on their cloaks, claiming the rock is rising again." Jaime's spoon stopped midway to his mouth. "Lions?" The old man nodded. "Aye, they came from the west, through the river road. Said a young lord wears a crown of gold and iron, calls himself the heir of the lion." Swan frowned. "Impossible. All the Lannisters are dead." "Not all," Jaime said quietly. That night, he could not sleep. The rain drummed against the roof, steady and relentless. "The heir of the lion." The words echoed through him. Had some cousin or pretender risen in the ruins of his house? Or had one of his own blood survived, hidden from the ruin he had left behind? In his dreams, he saw Cersei again, but not as she'd been. She stood upon the battlements of the rock, her hair unbound, her eyes like molten gold. "You cannot kill what you are," she whispered. "The lion lives in you, Jaime. It always will." He woke before dawn, his breath ragged, the taste of salt and blood in his mouth. Swan was already awake, packing the horses. "We ride west," Jaime said. Swan looked up. "You're certain?" "As certain as a dying man can be." They left before the sun rose, following the road toward the hills that rolled like sleeping beasts across the horizon. Days turned to weeks as they crossed the riverlands and entered the Westerlands again, the soil richer here, the air sharp with the scent of pine and sea. The nearer they drew to Casterly Rock, the heavier Jaime's heart grew. He had buried his sister there, buried the pride of his house, and yet the thought of another Lannister, another claimant, gnawed at him like a wound. On the fifth night, they reached the cliffs. The sea roared below, white foam striking against red stone. And there, atop the heights, Jaime saw the faint glow of fires. The rock was lit again. They rode closer by moonlight until the shadow of the fortress loomed above them, vast and terrible as memory. Guards watched from the gate, men in golden cloaks, armed and vigilant. When they hailed the riders, Jaime felt an ache deep in his chest. "Who holds the rock?" Swan called out. A voice answered from above. "The Lion Reborn, Lord Lannister of Casterly Rock." "Name him," Jaime demanded. The gate creaked open. A man rode out, a youth of perhaps 19, his armor new-forged, his hair bright gold. His face bore the lines of arrogance Jaime knew too well. "Jaime Lannister," the boy said, reining in. "I knew you'd come." "Who are you?" Jaime asked. "Lan the Younger," he said with a proud smile. "Son of Davin, Lord of the Rock now, by right of blood. You left us to rot, Kingslayer, but we've risen. The lions are not dead." Jaime dismounted slowly, his eyes never leaving the boy. "You think to rebuild our house with the same pride that ruined it?" "With strength," Lan said. "The realm is weak. We will make it whole again." Swan's hand went to his sword. "You'll start another war." "The realm needs war," the boy said fiercely. "Peace has made cowards of us all." Jaime felt a cold fury stir within him. He saw Tywin's shadow in the boy's stance, Cersei's fire in his eyes. He saw the curse of his house taking root again. He stepped closer. "You speak of strength, but you know nothing of it. Strength is not conquest. It's what you cling to when all else is gone." The boy sneered. "Then you are no lion." Jaime's hand struck out, swift as instinct. His golden fingers caught the young man's collar and pulled him close. "No," he said. "I am the ghost that haunts lions." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Jaime released him and turned away. "Burn your banners if you must. but I will not see another war born of our pride." He mounted his horse. Swan followed, eyes wary. "Where will you go?" Lan shouted after him. Jaime looked back once. The wind tore at his cloak, the moon catching in his hair like pale fire. "Away," he said, "before the lions eat themselves again." They rode until dawn, the rock fading behind them into the mist. As the sun broke over the sea, Jaime felt the weight of his past fall away, piece by piece. The world stretched vast and uncertain before him. The boy would do as all lions did, roar, devour, fall. But Jaime would no longer be bound to it. He had spent a lifetime trying to escape his name. Now, at last, he rode free of it. And as he turned toward the rising sun, the waves crashing far below, he thought he heard Casterly Rock's voice fade into the wind. Its echo neither curse nor blessing, but farewell. The road wound along the sea like a silver thread beneath the pale dawn. The storm had passed, but the wind still carried the scent of salt and ash. Jaime Lannister rode without speaking, the world around him stripped to gray cliffs and restless waves. Behind him, Casterly Rock faded into the mists. A shadow of gold turned ghostly white in the distance. He did not look back. Some burdens were lighter when left unseen. Sir Balan Swan rode a few paces behind, his armor dulled with salt and dust, his eyes wary. For days, neither had spoken much. They were men of silence now, relics of a dying age that had already passed them by. Yet as the cliffs rose higher and the sea grew wilder, the air itself seemed to breathe with old memory, and even silence felt heavy with meaning. "You could have stayed," Swan said at last. "The boy would have followed you. The West might have risen again." Jaime shook his head. "That boy carries my father's pride and my sister's hunger. The rock will rise again only to fall again, and I have no wish to watch it happen twice." Swan grunted. "You've lost faith in your own blood." "I've seen what Lannister blood does when it's spilled," Jaime replied. "It poisons the ground it touches." The wind caught his cloak, snapping it out like a banner. He looked out over the sea, endless and gray, and for the first time in his life, he felt small enough to belong to it. By noon, they reached the ruins of a seaside holdfast, a small, forgotten place perched upon the cliffs. Its gate hung open, its courtyard strewn with weeds and gull feathers. The sea crashed below, the tide booming in the caverns beneath. Jaime dismounted and stepped through the broken archway, brushing moss from the old stones. "Someone once loved this place," he murmured. Swan followed, glancing around. "Someone once loved every ruin in this land. The wars just forgot them." They found shelter in what had been the hall, a roofless chamber now filled with grass and silence. Jaime sat beside the hearth, tracing the faded carvings on the wall. Lions and ships, waves and crowns. The sigil was not Lannister, but old Rain, the red lion that had roared once against the golden. "Rains," he said. "I remember Father's stories. He drowned them beneath their own halls." Swan gave a wry smile. "And now the sea takes what's left. Fitting." The tide whispered faintly through the cracks in the cliffs, as though in agreement. Jaime's golden hand glinted faintly in the dim light. "Perhaps this is where I should end," he said. Swan frowned. "You speak like a man looking for death." "I've been looking for it a long time," Jaime said. "It's simply been too slow to find me." Swan stepped forward. "Then I'll say this plain. The realm still needs men like you, broken or not. You've seen the worst of it. You know what peace costs. Don't let the young lions burn it again." Jaime looked up. "And what would you have me do?" sit in councils, whisper sense to fools. I was made to fight, Balon, and now I've no wars left to fight." "Then fight for something smaller," Swan said. "For people, for roads, for crops that might grow again. If you're too proud for that, then you deserve to die here." The words stung, but they were true. Jaime felt them settle in his chest like cold iron. That night, he could not sleep. He walked the cliffs alone, the waves crashing below, the stars sharp as glass above. He thought of every oath he'd sworn and broken, of every name the world had given him. Kingslayer, Oathbreaker, Lion of the Rock. None of them fit now. He was a man unmade, a sword without a master. Yet as he stood there beneath the vast and endless sky, he realized that unmaking was not the same as ending. It was freedom of another kind, the kind his father had never known, nor his sister. When dawn came, the world was washed clean. The air smelled of salt and grass, and the first light gilded the sea in gold. Swan was already saddled, his helm under his arm. "You've made your choice," he said. Jaime nodded. "I'll ride with you as far as the capital. After that, the realm can do as it pleases." They rode east once more. The roads were safer now, dotted with farmers and merchants returning to their lives. Children ran alongside the horses, laughing. At a river crossing, a woman handed them apples, and Jaime gave her a coin without thinking. She smiled, though she did not recognize him. It felt strange and right to be just another traveler. By the time they reached the outskirts of King's Landing, spring had come. The fields were green again, the air full of new leaves and the hum of bees. The city itself had changed. Scaffolds climbed the blackened walls, and new towers rose where old ones had burned. The red keep loomed above, still scarred, but less terrible now, its stones pale in the sunlight. The gates stood open. Guards nodded them through. No one whispered his name. They passed through markets full of noise and color. Where once there had been starving mobs, there were bakers shouting prices, fishmongers with full baskets, children chasing dogs through the dust. Jaime could almost believe the realm might heal after all. The council chamber lay within the keep, its walls draped in plain banners of gray and gold, symbols of unity, the guard said. The men who ruled now were not kings, but stewards, each sworn to keep peace. They welcomed Jaime as they would any soldier. He listened as they spoke of rebuilding, of trade, of grain stores and river bridges. When they asked his counsel, he gave it quietly, without pride. They thanked him and offered him a seat among them. But that night, he stood upon the balcony overlooking the black water and knew he could not stay. He was not meant for halls and parchment. His place was upon the road, where the world still turned wild and uncertain. He found Ser Balon in the stables. "I'm leaving," he said. Swan smiled faintly. "I thought you might." "Tell them what you will," Jaime said. "That the Kingslayer is dead, if it helps them sleep." Swan clasped his arm. "Then ride far, Jaime, and if the gods are just, find something worth saving." At dawn, he rode out of the city. No banners followed him, no horn sounded his name. Only the cry of gulls and the murmur of waves filled the air. He turned once toward the sea. Beyond the horizon lay the west, the rock, and all the ghosts he had buried. Ahead lay the open road, green with spring and promise. For a long moment he lingered, the wind pulling at his cloak. Then he touched the hilt of his sword, no longer polished but still sharp, and spurred his horse onward. The sun rose behind him, catching the golden threads in his hair, and the world opened wide before him, untamed and waiting. And though no herald cried his name, and no bard would sing his tale. The man who rode into that dawning light carried the heart of a lion still, quieter now, tempered by loss, but beating all the same. For the house of the lion had devoured itself, but from its ruin came something new. Not pride, not power, but peace, hard-earned and dearly bought. And so Jaime Lannister rode beyond the world of kings and crowns into legend, where the last roar of House Lannister was not of war or vengeance, but of a single man finding his way home at last.